ॐ तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भुरिदा जनाः. We just listened to a wonderful song which was sung by a singer by the name Bhupati. The date was 25th October 1885, and the song, the original Bengali song which you heard, Chidananda Sindhu Nire Premananda Lahari. Chidananda means the ocean of consciousness. We all know that there is an ocean of consciousness at the background of this entire creation. The whole Prakriti is animated by a consciousness, a supreme principle of unified consciousness, which we know as Brahman. So when you say Prajnanam Brahma, that consciousness is itself Brahman. So that Brahman pervades the entire universe. It pervades the entire Prakriti. And the creation that you see is because of that consciousness acting upon Prakriti. Prakriti by itself is insentient, but it is the consciousness of the Purusha that makes it sentient, and then we say the play of Maya or play of Prakriti. So this song, Chidananda Sindhu Nire, Premananda Lahari, ecstatic waves rise high on the sea of consciousness and bliss. So Satchidananda, which is a sea, an infinite sea of pure consciousness and bliss, on that the waves of ecstasy are rising up. So that is the idea behind this wonderful song. And how enthralling, how sweet is the play of that great ecstasy. So this drama, which the divine drama which Sri Krishna is playing, it is as it were, or all incarnations like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is a song composed by the Vaishnavas, trying to show that the divine play of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is also considered to be an incarnation of God, is nothing but waves in that ocean of consciousness. A person who has realized that consciousness, who is become one with that consciousness, feels a kind of bliss and joy which cannot be expressed through any worldly example. Worldly joy and pleasure and happiness is nothing compared to the waves of ecstasy and joy as a result of being one with this infinite consciousness. So this is the meaning of the song, that Chidananda Sindhu Nire. Chidananda means Chidananda, Chit and Ananda. Ishwar is Sat, Chit and Ananda. Sat is existence. On that ocean of existence, ocean of consciousness rather, the bliss, that is Ananda, the joy, expresses itself through human form, through the human form of the Avatara. So many waves come. One big such wave was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Another big such wave was Rama. Another big such wave was Krishna. So all these incarnations who have fully identified themselves with the ocean of consciousness, they have become one with that. So when they sport, when the divine sport is expressed through this world, in this world, when it comes down to our consciousness, our limited consciousness, we see we see that in the form of ecstasy and bliss, the higher ecstasy and bliss which ordinary human beings have no access to. We can just imagine, we can just observe that when we see the great incarnations playing out that role of theirs. So the next line says, so many waves of new feeling rise in the sport of love. Now that love can be expressed in many ways. Radha expressed it in one way, Arjuna expressed it in one way. They all loved the Lord and loved the sport of the Lord, recognized the Lord and appreciated him in different relationships. It can be the relationship of a child to its mother, the joy which a child gets by seeing its biological mother So you can imagine, when if you think of yourself, think of, if a sadhaka thinks of himself as a child of the infinite consciousness, of child of Prakriti, then that joy is unlimited, because biological joy is limited. You are limited to your own mother, the own biological mother. But if you imagine, if the mother of the universe of takes that place, and then she has access to the infinite consciousness of Brahman himself. Shiva sports as Shakti. So when you see Shakti as the divine mother, the waves of bliss you experience are nothing compared, the waves of bliss which you experience in this world, the highest bliss which a person can experience in this world, are nothing compared to the waves of bliss which these great incarnations experience. So that's why the poet says, so many waves of new feeling rise in the sports of love of the incarnation. So many waves, rising, falling, ever repeating. Repeat, O mind, the name of Hari. So every time they say Hari Bol, and all, when you repeat the name of Hari, who is also an incarnation, Vishnu who has come as Hari. So when they chant the name of the infinite Lord, those waves of bliss find its echo in the mind. The same uh, bliss is echoed in the personality of these great incarnations. And the devotees who sing these songs try to imagine, try to get a particle of that wonderful bliss which these incarnations felt at every moment of their life. The whole of creation becomes one in the great communion. So it's not just a part of Prakriti. When you enjoy a beautiful scenery, when you enjoy a beautiful sweet, when you enjoy certain things of this world which are very, very limited, we are not able to enjoy the entire Prakriti as Brahman or as the incarnations enjoy. They feel one, they become one with the whole Prakriti. So you can imagine how many times that joy will be multiplied. So Sri Ramakrishna used to say, I can't explain to you the nature of that bliss before which even most of the worldly joys become pale into insignificance. The worldly joys that we experience, the highest joys of getting lot of money, lot of wealth, and all the pleasures of the world, if you put together, still they are limited because their scope is limited. They are limited to the senses. Whereas if you imagine the whole of Prakriti, the whole of creation becomes one in this great communion with the Purusha or the great consciousness. So once we experience that bliss, that consciousness, that Sachidananda deep within our heart, when we somehow establish that connection, either through these wonderful songs, wonderful kirtan, that was the goal of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to sing this kirtan and share that infinite joy and bliss or consciousness through these songs. That is the medium for through which these great incarnations shared that great joy. It's not just through samadhi they experienced that great joy. That samadhi they could enjoy it through the sport. They sported through the various aspects of Prakriti. They sang songs. They sang these uh, they composed great songs. They sang it. They danced to those songs, and through that they gave a hint or a particle of that great bliss that they were feeling. Of course, they could not make you experience the same bliss. When Swami Vivekananda saw many of these small devotees who used to come, they used to sing in bliss. He thought, perhaps I am missing out. Why am I not experiencing this kind of ecstasy? Why are these people, when they hear Thakur singing and Thakur dancing, Sri Ramakrishna singing this kirtan in the style of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to sing, and people from the streets and all people, devotees who had flocked from different parts of Bengal, they used to uh, just enjoy that bliss for that particular moment when he was singing. But then when they went home, that bliss would slowly subside. So it's not possible to enjoy the bliss as an incarnation enjoys. But through these kirtans, through these wonderful songs, when you sing this, you try to imitate that great wonderful bliss which the composer of that poem or the incarnation would have felt. So when Sri Ramakrishna listened to these songs, he could enjoy the bliss in total, the total bliss which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all the great incarnations experience. He could he could feel that he could. Hello, can you all see me?
Yes,
Yes, Swami.
Yeah, I can continue now. You can see me as well as hear me. Okay.
yes, we can. Yes, we can, Swamiji.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So the whole of creation or whole of Prakriti, when these incarnations come, they use Prakriti or Maya to enact this divine drama. Then it doesn't remain a human drama anymore. We sing, we dance, we also sing devotional songs. But we can't express that infinite bliss or infinite joy. Chidananda Sindhu Nire Premananda Lahari. That Premananda, that Ananda which is due to pure Prema, pure love of God, that you can get a glimpse of that if you are sensitive enough, those who are lucky enough, or those who can through meditation touch the infinite Lord, touch that infinite Lord, they can get an experience of that wonderful bliss. So all difference melts away. The difference that I am an insignificant jiva, I am an insignificant devotee, and God is supreme. That gap, when it goes away, when you start feeling, when you experience God in your own heart, that's the goal of meditation. We have to be satisfied in this world with limited joy because we enjoy or we have access to limited prakriti. We don't have access to the infinite joy of prakriti or the infinite purusha, which is the goal of life. We try to see him, no doubt, we try to see him in our own hearts, but we are not able to see him. And whenever this drama is enacted by these incarnations, by singing songs like Hari Bol and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to sing, many people used to dance and sing in ecstasy. So seeing that, Swami Vivekananda felt, I am not even able to enjoy a particle of this ecstasy. And Sri Ramakrishna, when he sings, there are so many young devotees like Choto Narayan, and there were so many other devotees who used to roll in ecstasy, and they felt, Swami Vivekananda felt, am I missing something? Why am I not able to experience that joy? Why am I not able to experience the joy which these people seem to experience? And he had this doubt, so he asked Sri Ramakrishna, please help, please let me also have this bhava. You people seem to be enjoying this song. I no doubt I enjoy singing this song, but I don't get overwhelmed by this ecstatic bliss. Is something wrong? Then Sri Ramakrishna said, no, 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 no. Nothing is wrong. Your capacity is too great. Then he gives the wonderful example of the elephant. He says that when an elephant enters a pond, a very small pond, the whole water is splashed. The water splashes and then the whole water becomes muddy, and then the elephant disturbs the whole pond, and it is observable. But when that same elephant goes into a mighty ocean, he becomes like a small speck. He does not disturb the very big lake or a very big ocean. When when an elephant enters a lake, very big lake, it hardly makes any splash, but if it enters a small pond, it makes a big splash. So that is why Sri Ramakrishna says, you are like a big lake. You have advanced so much in spiritual life that you cannot feel that small ecstasies which these young devotees are feeling, because they are satisfied with these small joys which they feel by listening to the kirtan. But your heart is so large, you want a deeper communion with the Lord. You want to become one with the Lord. Your capacity is like that big lake. So if an elephant enters a small lake, a small pond, there is commotion. You feel that ecstasy, and you feel that these people are getting that kind of ecstasy. So that is definitely better than worldly joy or worldly ecstasy, but still it is limited in scope. Whereas when if you experience, you want a higher experience, and that is why you don't easily get emotional when you hear these songs. So your capacity to enjoy higher ecstasy is much more than these people. So that consoled Swami Vivekananda. He wanted to experience that highest ecstasy. He was not happy with the little ecstasies you get by temporary joy. Of course, it is much better than worldly joy. As I said, the worldly people experience a kind of joy because they enjoy the pleasures of the world. That is fine. But Sri Ramakrishna says much higher is the joy of, uh, he used to give this example, Vishayananda, Bhajanananda, and then the final Ananda, the final ecstasy. So, what he means is that when you, Vishayananda is the joy you get when you enjoy the worldly objects, the worldly things. That is a lower kind of joy. Bhajanananda is the joy you get when you listen to Kirtan and you raise your mind at the Vijnanamaya Kosha level or the Manomaya Kosha level, where you enjoy the same joy, a refined type of joy in the mind. Bhajananda is definitely higher than Vishayananda. But then beyond that, when you experience the truth, that's Satchidananda or Brahmananda, it is known. When you get the joy of Brahman, even this Bhajanananda, this joy due to singing all these songs and dancing in ecstasy, those joys appear to be they appear to pale into insignificance. Then you go after higher joys, that is Brahmananda. So that is what, that joy of becoming one with the infinite, one with the supreme consciousness, Sat, Chit, and Ananda. That Ananda is the highest Ananda. So Brahmananda, highest. Below that is Bhajanananda, the Ananda which the devotees are experiencing now after hearing this song. And then the lower one is Vishayananda. So, time and place, the very thought of distinction, all those and all else are no more. Now, when this Bhajanananda gets converted into Brahmananda, the poet says here, the song expresses this feeling that as I go on enjoying higher and higher ecstasies, as I listen to Hari Bol and the wonderful Kirtan, first I start with a lower kind of Bhajanananda, but when I unite myself, when the idea of time, space, everything is lost in Samadhi, when I become one with the consciousness, infinite consciousness, he says all the time, place, and very thought of distinction between I and the Lord vanish. That is what Swami Vivekananda was aspiring for. He was not happy with the visions of form and other things. They were okay for those who wanted a lower kind of Bhajanananda. But if you want a higher kind of Brahmananda, then this poem says, as you go on enjoying, repeating the name of the Hari, the japa first removes the idea of Vishayananda. It converts your worldly joy and shows how insignificant it is worldly with this worldly joy is, and it gives you a taste of the Bhajanananda. And when that happens, Sri Ramakrishna says, when you get set, when you get established in that, when your meditation becomes deeper, then you get the Brahmananda, the joy you get of being one with your Ishta, one with the goal of your life. The Ishta who is Sachidananda, who has come in the form of an avatara or a incarnation. So that melts away into the infinite ocean of Brahman, and that gives you the highest joy, the Brahmananda. And all my wishes now fulfilled, they too have melted away. So as long as you have the mind, as long as you have some worldly desires, then your mind has many desires, many wishes. I want to do this, I want to enjoy that, I want to enjoy wealth. So he says all my wishes have gone away because I have got my all my desires which gave me limited joy have gone away because I have found a higher joy. First I found that bhajan and I started dancing and jumping in joy. And then the poet says, after that when I saw the Lord himself, then I thought what a silly, I was chasing the smaller and insignificant joys of the world. Then I came to a higher kind of joy that was Bhajanananda. Even that appears to be very insignificant. It pales into insignificance in comparison to that infinite joy of union with this Satchidananda Brahman. That is the idea. Now my mind be lifted up in joy and repeat Hari's name. So don't allow it to go back to Vishayananda. Keep repeating the name. Because when we come back to the ordinary plane, Sri Ramakrishna also, after he went to Samadhi, he did not like any worldly person to come and touch him. He had instructed Baburam Maharaj and some pure minded souls to be very near him. And he had given them instructions. As soon as I come down from Samadhi, please utter some holy name in my ear so that I come down gradually. I just don't come down to the world, to this samsara directly. That gives a big shock. So let me first repeat the name of Hari and slowly get my consciousness. This was an experience which everybody observed, including Mahendralal Sarkar. He saw the biological changes that took place, how he went into Samadhi, and when he went into the highest Brahmananda state, he used to, his face, there are one or two photos of Sri Ramakrishna which clearly show his eyes, his face, his mouth, everything is a window where he's trying to express that Brahmananda to this physical frame. And because he could not come down to this worldly plane, because that used to give him a lot of pain, so he had instructed some of his pure disciples who could keep their minds on a higher plane, people like Baburam Maharaj, Swami Premananda, who were, and Holy Mother used to sometimes utter some name. He had told, in case I go into Samadhi, please utter these names so that my mind can come down a little. So he says, now my mind, this poet is saying, let it be lifted in joy and repeat Hari's name. So from Vishayananda, let me repeat the Hari's name, or let me repeat Hari's name, my Ishta's name, and sing his glories, repeat his japa, so that I will come to a state where I can enjoy that Brahmananda. And if the Lord showers his grace upon me, I can even get that highest Ananda, which is Brahmananda. Then the song continues. He says, gone are delusion, fear, pity, ritual actions, piety, ritual actions, and good works. Pride of race and caste have vanished. Now, these are the worldly problems which were obstructing that Bhajanananda. So he says, as I go on repeating the name of Hari, what is happening? What is the transformation that is taking place in me? So he says the transformation is first the delusion goes. The delusion that worldly objects can give me permanent joy, that is the first delusion that goes. And fear also goes. What kind of fear goes? Fear that if I lose these worldly objects, if I lose my name, if I lose my fame, if I lose my money and all those small things, if those things happen, I will be doomed forever. So that fear of losing these worldly things is what will vanish. That fear will not be there because you haven't tasted that divine bliss, and that will make you fearless. Not that these worldly things will vanish, but even if they vanish, most of our anxieties, our fears, are because of anxieties. The anxieties are that we might lose these things, we might lose our health, we might lose our money, we might lose, these things are very much there. But the play of Maya is such, the play of the mind is such that it convinces you, and we create trouble for ourselves. They are all self created troubles. The fear which is self created, the anxiety which is self created, is troubling me. So, repeating of the name of Hari, what happens? Repeating the Lord's name removes this fear and delusion. It removes the delusion that these things, the attachment to these things. Delusion is that these things are going to make me happy. My wealth is going to make me happy. My property is going to make me happy. And then you find it's not making you happy, then you run after something else. Then you want name, then you want fame. Oh, if I lose my name, if I lose my popularity, then people will not respect me. So people sometimes are not attached to their wealth, but they are attached to their name and fame. So there are many things, the losing of which uh, puts fear in our minds that if I lose, even before it has been lost, the situation is bad, somebody might rob my money, or something may happen, or I may fall sick, my health may go. So there are so many anxieties. So the repetition of the Lord's name, the poet says, removes my delusion, removes my fear, removes even my piety. That piety or that desire to show that I'm a religious person, that I do this, I do japa, I do perform all these rituals. So there is a full public display, as Thakur used to say, a Rajasic type of religious behavior. It is not that one has spirituality or one is inclined to spirituality or one is inclined to repeat the name of the Lord to remove these delusions, but they repeat it so that they get some kind of recognition. So that is known as piety. So ritual actions and good works. So good works also we do. If we don't do it as a service of God, that even doing good actions with some hope of some return, doing good to somebody by expecting something back in return. So those are not good works. These are the delusions which, according to the poet here, prevent you from enjoying that bliss or that joy or that peace or that contentment which comes out of repeating the holy name of the Lord. Then he says, where am I? And where is Hari? Having stolen my heart, he has run away. So, this is a feeling which most devotees get. Most devotees who meditate on a form of God, they feel restless if they cannot see, if they cannot, when the stage comes in their life, when they always like to be connected. It's like a small child longing to be in the arms or in the lap of the mother. The child doesn't want to go away. It might go away for a little while, but the moment it remembers the mother, it starts fearing. It wants security, it wants fearlessness, it wants some kind of comfort, it wants love. So it just comes back. So, similarly, when you consider yourself a divine child of the Lord who is seated in your heart, suddenly, if you don't see Him, the moment you repeat His name, the moment you remember Him, you seem to have a feeling that He is one with you. He has not gone anywhere. But sometimes, very often, when our devotion is not firmly established, we suddenly get a feeling that the God has deserted us. That mother has suddenly deserted. The child suddenly feels he's lonely. If he doesn't see the mother, if you see Latu Maharaj was just very childlike. He was not educated. He didn't know anything about bhakti and all. All he knew is Thakur loves me, I love Thakur, and he is the one who will protect me. He was so simple and uncomplicated that he had that kind of relationship with Thakur. So when he was in the gross body, when Thakur was alive, when Thakur, of course, Thakur was even after his Mahasamadhi, he used to give Latu Maharaj many visions and convince him that he was still there. But when he was physically present in Dakshineshwar and Latu Maharaj, Swami Adbhutananda used to serve him, he had a peculiar habit. He used to say when he got up from his sleep, the first thing he wanted to see was Thakur's face. He did not like to see anybody's face. So Thakur had to take so much pains to see that when Latu gets up, I should be near him. Otherwise, he'll simply close his eyes and start shouting, where are you? When Sri Krishna replied, I am here, then he used to open his eyes. Because he had a strange feeling that I might lose Thakur. I might lose Sri Krishna. And if I lose him, then what will be my condition? So that kind of panic is very common, and the poet is feeling. The poet is a very highly evolved soul, but even then he says, I feel sometimes my Hari suddenly has left me, and that causes some kind of pain. He says, where am I? And where is Hari? So he suddenly feels that the mother or Hari or the mother of the universe has given him some toys, and the child is busy with the toys and is very engrossed with the toys. And suddenly, when he remembers that he has gone far away from the mother, so he just panics and then he says, where is my mother? So, similarly, the devotee who is meditating and who was one with God, was very secure in the presence of God in his heart, suddenly sees his heart is dark, there's full of ignorance. The Lord is no longer shining there. And even in spite of his japa, is not able to connect. So those situations make him feel that having stolen my heart, he has run away. He feels Oh, he was sitting there. He was very much there. And he made me so much attached to him, like a child would be attached to the mother. And heartless, without any hesitation, he has simply escaped or left me, leaving me alone. So that is the panic which sometimes the devotee or the uh, sadhaka feels when he does not see the Lord, his only support, his all in all. There is a beautiful song, Natha tumi sarvasva amar, pranadhar saratsar, nahi tuma bine keho tribhuvane. So, Bolibar Apanar. So, there is a beautiful Bengali song, Natha tumi sarvasva amar. Now, this song was a favorite song. It was something similar to this song. It was a favorite song of Sri Ramakrishna. And he once told Swami Sharadananda, who was his disciple, he said, if you just remember this song, this beautiful song, then and take one of its bhava, one of its attitudes, if you take from this whole song, the whole song is full of different attitudes or different bhavas a sadhaka or a devotee should have towards his Ishta or Lord. A different kind of relationship. Some think of the Lord as the father or a mother or as a brother or a friend or any other relation or even as a husband or as a wife. So there are so many human relationships possible with God. And when they find, they become so intimate with that then there are other relationships where the human relationship is not there. That is pranadhar. Natha, Natha means my father. You are my all in all. To me, sarvasva amar. You are my all in all. I have nobody else. Now, what are those things? What are those different attitudes with which one can attach oneself with the God, with the Lord, with our Ishta? He says, Natha, tumi sarvasva amar pranadhar. You are the support of my prana. Whenever I am in trouble, whenever my prana, pranamaya kosha, annamaya kosha, I feel suffocated, I don't know what to do. You are my support. Pranadhar, sarat sar. Means you are the essence of essence. I have a feeling that I am this, I am Mr. So and I have this identity. But you are that identity which gives this identity strength. You are the essence of my essence. I don't know my essence. I don't know my divinity. I have a vague idea of who I am. I just know my name, I know my occupation, I know my profession. But I have not understood myself. But I know one thing, though I don't know myself, I know you are the essence of my essence. Whatever essence, whatever I am, it is because of you. You are giving it life, you are giving it support, you are doing everything. You are everything, in fact, for me. So that kind of security, that kind of support, that kind of dependence on God is that feeling is there in this song. Nahi tuma bine keo tribhuvane tribhuvane. There is nobody in these three worlds, in the gross world, in the subtle world, or in the causal world. In the all the three worlds, neither in Swarga nor in this world, in the subtle world. Nahi tuma bine, without you, there is nobody whom I can call my own, either in the gross, in the biological world, in the physical world, in the uh, mental world, in the subtle world, or even in the causal world. So, my samskaras, which are there in the causal world, are dependent on you. My thoughts, my dreams, my nightmares, my terrors, my fears, my anxieties, they are all dependent on you for support. So, you have to remove those delusions, you have to remove the fears, you have to do everything because you are my sole support. And for this physical world also, so there may be so many dangers. So it's not that there will be only mental calamities. There can be physical calamities. There can be calamity to my prana, to my body, to my prana. It can affect anything. So you are the nahi tuma bine keu tribhuvane. In these three worlds of gross, subtle, and causal, there is nobody who nobody like you. You are the only one who is the support of all the three worlds, the gross world, the subtle, my subtle personality, and my causal personality. Nahi tumabine kehu tribhuvane bolivar apnar. Means I cannot see any other person on whom I can depend so much for my gross needs, my subtle needs, my causal needs. My whole personality, the essence, is part of the divine essence that you are. So that is the song. Why did I come to this shore of love's ocean? Now, this ocean has been compared to a huge ocean of love. Our limited love that we see in this world, in the gross world, is a dependent love. I love you, you love me. If I get something from you, I love you, otherwise, I hate you. This is a business type of love. In the beautiful talk, Bhakti Yoga, Swamiji talks of the triangle of love. There he says, most of us are barters. We are business people. We give love only if we get love. Just as we give somebody some money if we get something in return. You go to the shop, you buy something. Unless you give some money, the shopkeeper is not going to give you anything. So it is a barter. It is known as barter. You trade something for something else. So he says we are barters in love also. We are doing bartering in love. We expect, we want the God. We said we'll pray to you, we will repeat your name if you can do us this favor. Only if you do us that favor. There's no unconditional love. That's why he says, why have I come to this ocean of love? So that real love, that it's there is no question of give and take. There is no question of barter in that. So you don't say, I love you because you love me. There is no conditional. You just love because for love's sake, and the Lord also reciprocates that way, whether you want it or not. So he says, why did I come to this love's ocean? Because the devotee says that he is attracted by this infinite love. When Swami Vivekananda approached Sri Ramakrishna, he did not, just to test him, for a few days he did not talk to him. He just neglected him. Whenever he used to come with other devotees, earlier he used to give a lot of attention, lot of importance to Naren and talk to him, feed him and all those things. But for a few days he just stopped. He started ignoring Naren deliberately, just to see how deep is his love for his guru. So the he saw Naren is coming every day. He comes. Naren Thakur did not even speak to him for a few days, and he was just focusing on other people. So Naren came, and he thought perhaps his pride would be wounded, that he will feel, why is Thakur neglecting me? But Naren came because he had that true love. He was not loving Thakur because Thakur loved him. He was so uh, immersed in that love that then Naren asked him. Sri Ramakrishna asked Naren, see, I did not even talk to you for this last few days, and I am seeing that you are coming with the same good mood and the same devotion and love for me. And he says, yes, I come here to love you, not to whether you love me or not, I don't know, but it is one-sided. So love has to be unidirectional. It has to be one-sided. Then only you get the full response. So he says, why did I come to this love's ocean? Because you simply love it. Yudhishthira also told uh, somebody, why do I go to the mountains? The mountains do not give anything to me. I love the mountains. I love love Prakriti. It is just out of love I go and see these wonderful mountains, the snow peaks. Somebody asked Yudhishthira, why do I go? Said the snow peaks don't give me anything. But I go there because I love to go there. I love it. So that is now what is he saying? Chidananda Sindhu Nire Premanande Lahari. In that beautiful ocean of consciousness, the Lord Himself, who is condensed consciousness, it is so beautifully expressed in the Khandana Bhava Bandhana. He says Chid Ghana Kai. His body is not a body. It's not a biological body that you see in Sri Ramakrishna. Chid Ghana. Chid means consciousness. consciousness has become solidified. Ghana means to solidify. So consciousness has taken a form of Sri Ramakrishna. It's that same infinite consciousness, Chidananda Sindhu Nire. It's a very big ocean of consciousness, and one wave comes and it overwhelms us. So that's why he says, I've come to this ocean because I love to see that ocean. And I love to see these whole big waves come. And as I said, when you do yoga, Patanjali says, you just cover all the smaller waves with that big wave which comes and flattens everything. So that big wave is our Ishta. And he is the essence of our essence, the soul of our soul. He is the support of our mind, support of our prana. It's a very long song, Natha Tumi Sarvasvama. So this is what this poem also, Chidananda Sindhu Nire Premananda Lahiri, is trying to explain. Now, filled full with feeling is my heart, but not yet with dullness overcome. But he says, my heart has become full, but that is not enough because I want more. It is a yearning where you are not satisfied with the limited love that you are able to give to your Ishta. You want to love him all the more. It is just like a person loves to go to the mountains to see the peaks. Once he goes there, then he feels like going again and again and again and again. It becomes a passion with him. So also the poet is saying, uh, I have not even overcome that dullness. The dullness comes now and then. When I suddenly feel that you are not there, when I can't love you, I can't see you, I can't have that same feeling again. I miss you in my heart. I suddenly see the absence, see your absence in the heart. Then everything becomes dull. Everything. I feel that I should overcome that dullness and somehow bring back that joy in my life. So this happens very often. It's also known as the dark night of the soul. In Christian mysticism, it has been given the word dark night of the soul. So every Saint Teresa in her, she mentions that. There's Saint Augustine. There are so many wonderful uh, books written by them where they themselves experience that when they felt that Christ was firmly entrenched within their hearts, their hearts were full of love. Suddenly, some kind of darkness or dullness comes. So they feel we should overcome this dullness, the dark night of the soul, as they say. The soul suddenly feels, my Lord, you were here. I so nicely and so continuously repeating your name, praying to you, I cultivated your presence. And suddenly you leave me and go. So that feeling is here. He says, having stolen my heart, he has suddenly run away. So that is what Radha used to feel when she felt that Krishna is no longer with her. The pangs of separation were too intense for her to bear. So this is being expressed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's devotee who is singing this song, that he suddenly feels that Hari has left them. So Hari, they are trying through this song, trying to imagine, because imagination, this feeling, and this repeated repetition of the name, these are the various ways through which we can remove our dullness, the dullness of ignorance, the dullness of we have to overcome that dullness, that dark night of the soul, by bringing that light again and again. So it requires tremendous effort. So the sadhaka say, these dark nights, let them come. Hari might have gone, the mother might have gone somewhere, but if the child cries, the mother has to come. Maybe he was busy with some toys. So the mother thought, let me finish my work and come. But the moment the child cries for the mother has to come. So this was Thakur's attitude, and this is the attitude of this poet with the song which Bhupati is singing. He says, filled full with feeling in my is my heart. Filled full, I have a lot of feeling, but not yet with dullness overcome. I have not yet overcome that dullness, which now and then comes to me. So I have to go on feeling that joy, trying to remember your name, singing the name of Hari again and again and again, to firmly entrench the Lord's presence, to feel the presence, to practice the presence of the Lord. There's a beautiful book by Brother Lawrence, whose only sadhana, he was not familiar with the rituals of the church, and he could not pray properly. He could not pronounce the Psalms and the Bible. So he was looked down upon by the other members of the monastery. But he found that there is only the only simplest way to be in touch with the Lord is to feel His presence everywhere. So even while doing the most menial tasks, he was given all those tasks because he was not very educated. So naturally, he could not chant the hymns in the church and in the chapel. So he was given by the abbot only those duties which others normally would not like to do, like cleaning, like cooking, like cleaning the vessels, and working in the kitchen. But he said, I didn't feel that the Lord was absent there just because I was not in the shrine, just because I was not in his presence and doing some prayer. I could feel his presence even while cooking. So that is what is the what is meant by this last line, where the poet says that you have suddenly disappeared, dullness has come, but I still want to feel your presence. But because that feeling is still there. So all you need is a feeling that Lord is my own. So that was given so much of emphasis by Sri Ramakrishna in the gospel. He says, first learn to make the Lord your own. If you make him your own and then continuously cultivate that relationship, which has to be done very, very slowly, it doesn't come overnight because we have had so many other relationships, biological relationships. So it is difficult to superimpose that kind of human relationship on somebody whom you have not seen. We have seen a photograph. Maybe we have some conception of God, but we have not experienced that consciousness. So that is why repetition of the Lord's name, singing his praises, singing this kirtan. He says, say Premadasa, says Premadasa. Premadasa was the composer of this beautiful hymn. Hear all sadhus and all citizens of the earth. Such is the new way of God. He says, this is a new way. I have found out a new way. Just chant the name of Hari, and then you will see all the delusion, all the fears, and whatever he experienced, he is expressing. And he says these things will you will also get. So now, after a long time, after hearing these songs, Sri Ramakrishna regained his consciousness. He came back to the ordinary plane. Just this song took him from Vishayananda to Bhajanananda to Brahmananda. Then Brahmagyana and strange arithmetic, purpose of God incarnate. Why does God incarnate? What is the purpose? What does he give to people who pray to him? Why does he have to come to this earth? Sri Ramakrishna is telling him, I don't know what happens to me when I am in ecstasy. Now I feel ashamed as though I had been possessed by a ghost. Me and mine vanish in that state. So when he goes into ecstasy, that ego goes. He becomes like a child. And many times he used to behave like a child. But for a mature person, he feels it is below his dignity to look guileless, to look gullible, to look like a simple child. People want, even if they are not mature or even if they are not clever, they want to show that we are very serious minded, clever, and intelligent people. They think that if somebody makes fun of us, we will lose our individuality. That's a false idea which is troubling most of us. We don't want to be, if somebody calls us he's a simple person, we don't take it as a compliment. We think that he's, by telling me that you are simple, you are a fool. But only spiritual people, only people who have the right attitude towards life, they know the essence of spirituality, would think that this is a compliment. If somebody says you are like a child, you are simple, you are so innocent, those qualities are, unfortunately, the world thinks that these qualities are not to be cultivated. And anybody having that quality is a simpleton or is a fool. And they think, because of their ego, they think they are very wise, they are full of pride, but they don't understand that these are the people on whom God showers the grace. That is why Jesus very emphatically said, you cannot have access to the kingdom of heaven unless you go there as a child. What he meant was, with your inflated egos, with so much pride in your learning and pride in your uh, knowledge and pride in your achievements, especially full of ego, one has no access to this kingdom of heaven. By kingdom of heaven, he meant this wonderful supreme consciousness. It is people. That's why Sri Ramakrishna says, I think me and my vanish in that state. When I go into ecstasy, I become like a child, that me and mine, that pride, that ego goes. That is why he could see he could regain that child's vision, and he could see reality as it is and see the wonderful consciousness percolating in and through, pervading in and through the prakriti around him, the world around him. So the world doesn't remain the world anymore. It is a mart of joy. Thakur used to say, some people say this world is a bad place, there are bad people, people are not behaving properly with me, and I don't get justice here. There's so many people who complain. But Sri Ramakrishna, in spite of all the troubles, Holy Mother, in spite of all the troubles she had to face, they consider this world as a mart of joy. Every experience is a learning experience. It may be a painful experience or it may be a pleasurable experience. But they don't make any distinction because they have their connection firmly established with the source of bliss. And they know that that bliss can never be taken away. That faith or that connection with the Lord is so permanent, so eternal, that no amount of uh, worldly efforts by other people can take away from you this this wonderful joy or wonderful freedom. These are the things which we have to acquire for ourselves and cherish it. That's what the poem says, that this is the new way of God. If you believe in me, um, just follow these principles. That's what this saying. So M is saying, Sri Ramakrishna is telling M, I can't count when I come down from the state. I count 1, 7, 8, something like that. That means what he's saying is that I lose that logical capacity, which is far below. I cannot become cunning. When you say that you can calculate, you say is a very calculative person. So he says, I can't be a calculative person. A child can never calculate what benefit it will get or it will not get. The child is happy with whatever the child gets. If he gets a toffee, he is happy. If you give you a toy, he is happy. Whatever he gets unasked for, he is happy with that. And if you don't give, he is just happy to be in the lap of the mother. He is fine with that. He doesn't expect anything. That is what uncomplicated life of the child is like. But here he says, I sometimes feel that when I come back from that state, I cannot even count 1, 2, 3, 4 like a logical person. I count 1, 7, and 8. So these are the wonderful experiences Sri Ramakrishna had, where he shows that this childlike vision can be regained, which we lose as a result of our modern education. We can get it whenever we choose to, whenever we want joy, whenever we want comfort, whenever we want peace. There is no other solution than go back to this childlike ways. So there is a beautiful ghazal, a Sufi song, I think, I don't know who has written that, which says, I'll give you all the wealth of the world, but please return to me my childhood. I somehow want that. But of course, the poet there is is speaking in a different context. But he really feels that life has become so complicated. So he says, Mujhe lota do, you return to me my childhood. How happy I was when I was a child. So I don't want this wealth, I don't want name, I don't want fame. I'm tired of all this. Let me go back to my childhood days. So that is a sentiment which a very troubled or a very sad or a dejected person of the world, after so many painful experiences, is longing to go back to that childlike state. Poetry apart, Here, Sri Ramakrishna says it is actually a philosophy. It's not just a poetry. It's a harsh reality, but it's a reality all the same. We think that by becoming mature, by becoming complicated, by doing complicated things, or by enhancing our uh, becoming more and more clever, we think we are more and more, we will be more and more happy. But the cleverness or cunningness or worldly wisdom, the worldly excellence that you get, that does not guarantee you joy. If it is not used properly, if one does not know how to use the mind and the senses, the prana and all the koshas properly, no amount of excellence in skills or academic excellence will make one peaceful. Peace is not guaranteed. Peace, freedom, and contentment and joy, they're all intimately connected with each other. And these are the characteristics of children. Children means, I mean, innocent children who experience a strange kind of peace because of lack of ego. That ego has not yet developed. So they experience peace, they experience contentment with whatever they get. Life is a sport for them. They just don't take anything seriously. And then there is this uh, freedom, the idea of freedom. You can't force a child to do this. The smaller the child, the more free it is. He cannot be coerced. Sri Ramakrishna gave that example. Sometimes if he is in a mood, he will say, no, I'm not giving you the chocolate, and or I will not give you the toy. But somebody comes and says, you take this. He gives him a very insignificant sweet. The child will immediately is so free that he just gives it. He doesn't have any attachment for his toys. So that is what we see in young and innocent children. And Sri Ramakrishna says that I get that feeling. But Narendra gives a different interpretation and he says, it is because everything is one, isn't it? Because he was believing in monism, he was believing in Advaita. So he believed that a child has the nature of an Advaitin because it doesn't see the distinction. It cannot discriminate between good and bad. So it sees only one. It sees one universe. It is born that way. It wants to see pure consciousness. It sees pure consciousness everywhere. It doesn't distinguish between good and bad. Doesn't want to do any kind of. So he says that is a result of oneness because everything is one. Then Sri Ramakrishna corrects him and says, no, beyond 1 and 2. Now this is very important. Beyond Dvaita and Advaita. Now this, what does this mean? Then Mahima Charan says, yes sir, beyond duality and non-duality. Now Sri Ramakrishna Sri Ramakrishna is trying to say that by saying God is one, you are making a mistake. That is why very carefully these people use the word Advaita, not two. When you say not two, that doesn't mean it is one. No doubt it is one continuous existence, but even saying one implies that there is two. That is, there is difference. There is, because only if the Advaitic vision exists, if only consciousness exists, then where can there be two? The two is ignorance. So it is beyond 1 and 2. If you say 1, then there will be 2. That implies that there is 2. Because counting begins when we come to the relative world. So that is why Sri Ramakrishna says, their counting is meaningless. You can't say it is 1 or Advaita. Advaita means not 2. It doesn't mean 1. He says he cannot be realized through learning. He is beyond the scriptures, Vedas, Puranas and Tantras. When I see a person even holding a book in his hands, I call him a Rajarshi, though he is a Gnani. No outer sign can be found in a Brahmarshi. Do you know the use of scriptures? Somebody wrote a letter asking for 5 seers of Sandesh and a piece of cloth. The recipient read the letter, remembered 5 seers of Sandesh and a piece of cloth, and threw the letter away. Of what use was the letter then? Now, this is a very, very important example or simile which Sri Ramakrishna is giving. He says When you are going to the market, somebody asks you to bring certain things. Now, as long as if you think you will forget that, then you have to keep that slip. But once it is firmly entrenched in your memory, it has become a matter of your experience, then you don't need that slip. You know you have to buy these things and you are confident that you'll remember it, then you read it, then you can even tear it. So that is the value Sri Ramakrishna is giving to scriptures. That scriptures have only this much value. It can tell you what is the reality. But beyond that, don't hold on to these scriptures. Just as by holding on to that piece of paper, you're not going to get sandesh. You have to go to the shop, buy the sandesh. Paper is insignificant after you buy it, or even before you buy it. Paper just has given you the indication. So also, the indication that God exists has been given by the scriptures, and all you have to do is try to experience what you have taken up as true, what you believe as true, what has been told to you as true by the Shastras. You have to just experience that. So we will conclude today. It's almost 5. I have taken some 10 minutes more. There was a song today. So if there are some questions, you can ask based on what we discussed today.
Namaskar, Swamiji.
Yes. Yes.
Just wanted to check with you. Is there any upcoming program or festival for the upcoming Kalpataru Divas and
No,
Srima
because
Puja?
tier 4 restrictions are still in place, and we do not know what will happen in January. So as long as things do not improve, that's why we could not even have Christmas. We will be celebrating. We'll have special talks, and if possible, even have something on Zoom or this WebEx. So, but there will be definitely some program on online. So on first, which date is first? Which day of the week? First is which?
It's
Friday.
Friday, Maharaj.
Okay, so Friday anyway
Friday.
we have the Rajoga class. So instead of that, we will be talking on. We will try to discuss the Kalpataru incident. So being a Friday anyway, we have to take a class. So the timing will be the same. I'll inform you. It will be 4:30, and we will discuss Sri Ramakrishna as a Kalpataru. Now somebody is asking a question. I have a question. How can you gain the childlike quality later in life as you already have been conditioned with worldly experiences? Yeah, that is exactly what Swamiji said. We can undo anything. We can unlearn anything. What we have learned, the wrong things, I mean, you don't have to unlearn what is not harmful. What is harmful, those bad habits or those things which take away the child's vision, Swamiji says you can regain through sadhana, through spiritual practices. What exactly spiritual practices does is spiritual practice helps you to regain that child's vision. So though we may be conditioned by worldly experiences because we were not cautioned. Maybe we were not to blame. Nobody told us the importance of a good life, the importance of egolessness, the importance of humility, though these were told in the form of stories to children. So they used to hear these stories from their grandparents and they took it seriously. And these values were given at a very, very young age. Now, if that had happened and if the child was nurtured in that way, then there is a possibility that he would have not experienced the worldly experiences of which you are speaking. So it is unfortunate that this vision has been forcibly taken away from us in the name of education, in the name of teaching you some clever tricks to fool the world. We think we can fool the world. We can never do it. We think we can fool some people for some time, but we can't fool everybody throughout our life. But unfortunately, our education is based on that. We think we can outwit others. We are taught that there can be only win-lose situation. In business, they say win-lose. If one has to win, the other has to lose. But there is also a win-win situation where you don't have to lose. The idea of competition, that is a result of worldliness. Competition need not be for progress. You progress, I progress. Why should there be competition? So these are the wrong ideas. The worldly experiences are based on wrong ideas. That is why they are known as worldly. You tell your child that you should beat all other students in the class and you should be the best and you should feel proud that you have beaten others. Now, what will that child do? When it grows up, in every field, it will feel miserable if it stands second. He doesn't learn from his defeats. He cannot learn. He just collapses because he has been brainwashed and told that unless you stand first, unless you excel, unless you push down others, you can never succeed in life. I have seen many rich people. They said, unless you exploit others, how can you make money? Somebody has to lose. It is the survival of the fittest. So Darwin's theory came very handy to such people. And they said, how do you know the grace of God is there? If you survive, God's grace is there because you can push down, even if it means pushing down others, you have to survive. So if these ideas are given, then these ideas, see, a child does not have. The child, when it is born, it shares everything it has with his brothers, sisters, or even his friends, unknown friends. They may be of different ethnicity, they may be of different color, they may be poor, rich. When they play, they don't make these distinctions. But their parents, the elders, teach them, oh, this is black, this is white, this is your race, our race, rich, poor, class. So these distinction, these are worldly experiences which a child gathers and he loses his child's vision. So that is what I meant, that to regain that, you have to again practice spirituality and go back to that state where you don't get unnecessarily disturbed by these experiences, by these wrong experiences. And in fact, they are the people who are brainwashing the child. We don't understand. We don't understand that every minute we give a wrong idea of competition, of exploitation, of might versus right, and all those things. So when we give this competitive ideas, the survival of the fittest, and all these ideas, when we give to the child, in fact, we are conditioning the child's mind and we are making him unfit to live in this world. And we are, in fact, responsible for brainwashing him. And because he is not born with that, you remember, a child is born with simplicity. And you make him complex, you make him cruel, you make him crooked, you make him clever. No doubt, cleverness out of wisdom is something different. Wisdom is different than cleverness, but clever in the worldly sense, I'm saying. So we put all our efforts, give him all kinds of education, wrong thoughts, brainwash him, and tell him that if you want to survive, you have to mercilessly kill all competition. And then when he does not do it, and when he fails in life, when he becomes miserable, when he comes to you saying that I did what you told me and I'm now, see my condition, I'm nowhere. But then he has to unlearn this from these worldly experiences, that competition is not the way, that you don't have to belittle others to rise in life. You have your own unique identity, you have your own uniqueness. You be happy with that and don't try to compete. Just because somebody else has something, I should not run after that because he has. I have something which perhaps he doesn't have. So why can I not be content and happy with what I have. So these values nobody teaches children. And that is what is when I meant when I say how can you gain the childlike quality. That childlike quality is born with. We don't have to give him. He is born with that. But see how we spoil the child. All we have to do is not allow him to let him learn from Prakriti. That is why Swami Vivekananda once said, my master was the master went to the best university. He went to the University of Life. University of Life means Prakriti. He learnt everything from nature, from his mother, from the Divine Mother, who never gives you wrong knowledge. But he says, unfortunately, Swami Vivekananda said, I went to a university which gave me second-hand knowledge, which told me how to cheat, which told me how to manipulate people, which told me what is cleverness and gave me wrong ideas, told me about the wars, told me all about the evil that is in society, and those ideas brainwashed me. So he said Thakur's learning was the best because he went directly to nature, the university, and he went to nature for his knowledge, and nature gave him the correct knowledge. So that is what we have to do. We have to maintain a balance. Of course, we can't change the system. The child has to go in a competitive world. It has to go to the school. It has to do all the things which other people are doing. We have to be part of that rat race, which willingly or unwillingly. But since we are part of that rat race, that doesn't mean that we cannot at the same time give this the child's vision back to that child. We should see at least we should not be responsible. Society will do many situations will make him learn the wrong things, but at least at home or at least the parents have the responsibility of seeing that he develops his life skills also, and he maintains his purity, maintains his humility, maintains the unselfishness and all the good virtues which all the religions, all the religious texts, the spiritual texts of humanity have been telling again and again. You don't have to go to study complex philosophy for that. The simple teachings of the prophets, the simple parables of the great people, they give us all the moral values which we deny to these children. If that can be brought back, even adults can relearn or re-educate themselves. So there is a beautiful talk by Swami Ranganathanji, who was the 12th president of our order, re-education of the educated. It was a beautiful topic he gave in America. He said, re-education of the educated. So educated people have to unlearn what wrong things they learned and to re-educate themselves in a natural way, as Thakur has said. Okay, so I shall take your leave
Thank you,
now.
Swami.
Yeah. Any question? If there's in the chat there is no question. Oh, now there is one more question. The competitive world rat race is also part of Prakriti. So how can parents ensure that the child sees the higher Prakriti? It's a very good question. Is the competitive world part of lower Prakriti? Yes, exactly. That is why in the Mandukya, in one of the Upanishads, there is a saying that Prakriti are of two kinds. One is the lower Prakriti and there is a higher Prakriti. Just as Sriram Krishna said, there is a ripe ego and the raw ego. So the lower Prakriti, the simpler knowledge that we get, which is no doubt necessary for survival, physical survival, till we understand the complexities of higher Prakriti. So the child has to be told that apara Prakriti, apara Vidya and para Vidya. Para means the higher knowledge, that which takes you towards freedom. But he has to have the apara Vidya also. I'll tell you why. Because when he has a body, when he is in the world, he has to negotiate the world at the same time. So there is this para Prakriti or para Vidya, which helps him to decipher, understand. After understanding what is the goal of life, then if he uses or trains himself in the Apara Prakriti, he will not make mistakes. So in the Mundaka Upanishad it is there, this particular this thing. So this rat race, this competition, no doubt, it's a very, very nice observation somebody which has been made here, that are we catering to the needs of our lower Prakriti? Yes. The answer is yes. And the balance should be maintained, because you cannot totally do away with this lower Prakriti, because we cannot suddenly become leave the gross and the Annamaya Kosha and the Pranamaya Kosha, and we can't, because we are experiencing it because of the karma. Even the child experiences. The child has hunger, the child has thirst, the child has all the things which are needed in the world. But he should know where to have a stop. He doesn't have to run, follow that rat race, because that rat race ultimately will not, he has to balance. And it is for the parents, or it is for the children, when they get this training, that they are given equal. That is why in Gurukula, the spiritual knowledge was given with other knowledge. So Aparavidya was given with Paravidya. The higher knowledge was given along with the lower knowledge. So he knows how to use it. He knows how to use the lower knowledge, the lower Prakriti, without harming others, by not joining the right race, or by handling the competition in the right way. It's not that competition is not necessary. Competition, the rat race for that competition is, one should not take it as the goal of life. The means should not be confused with the goal. So this is a very, very, very good question, because we see around us that if we are not competitive at all, even a child, if he is not given the proper education, perhaps for him survival will be difficult. So he has to survive. But how much he needs to survive, that wisdom he should have. For survival, if I need this, and if I join the rat race and become so competitive that the means become the goal. So earning money itself becomes the goal. Earning money to have some security for oneself is something else. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna also said, a householder has to earn some wealth, earn some money, otherwise he can't survive. But then the higher Vidya, the Parama Prakriti, or the Paravidya, will teach him that what to do with this wealth, how to use it wisely. These are the functions of the higher knowledge, the higher Prakriti or the higher Vidya. So a balance has to be maintained. At least that should be form part of the education at the level of the child, so that he doesn't develop a lopsided personality that is full of Aparavidya, and he doesn't know what to do with the wealth he's earned. He doesn't even enjoy his wealth. He loses his freedom. In this rat race, he should not lose his freedom. He should not lose his contentment. He should not lose his peace of mind. If all these things happen, then what is the purpose? The means should not become the goal. Means are means. It has to have its own place in life, and the goal should be decided by the Paravidya. So thank you all of you. It's a very nice question, and I hope I have given the proper answer. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Pranamastu.
Leo, can we do the challenges now?
Maharaj, Pranam.
Namaste.
Namaste, Swami. Thank you.
Pranam Maharaj. Thank you, Swamiji. Namaste.